A quick introduction to the Get Cumbria Buzzing project. Get Cumbria Buzzing is a Cumbria Wildlife Trust project focused on helping pollinators. It's one of Cumbria Wildlife Trust's 2 pollinator projects, the other being planting for pollinators, which started late last year. But Get Cumbria Buzzing has been going since 2019. It's a 3-year project. And essentially during that time, it's created or enhanced 115 hectares of pollinator habitat in our project area, which you can see here on the right, along the north and west coast of Cumbria and across along the A66. And in this project area, we've also done a lot of work with communities in north and west Cumbria. We've worked with Cumbria Biodiversity Data Centre to increase recording of pollinators in Cumbria, and work with volunteers to create and run a wildflower nursery at Gosling Syke near Carlisle. And the hope is that with all these pieces of work, that it will help to increase local populations of pollinators, to raise awareness and to increase knowledge of pollinators and their issues, and to encourage everyone to take action. As I mentioned, our project started in 2019, and it was originally a 3-year project, so it was supposed to finish about now, but thankfully in the context of COVID we've been extended for another 6 months, so now we're in the final year of the project, but we've got lots of exciting activities between now and September when we finish. So first of all, the big plant, which in the first week of May, we're working with 100 community groups to run 100 community planting events to plant a total of 15,000 wildflowers in 1 week. The second is the Recording the Buzz area of work, and this webinar fits into that. So we're running a program of training events focused on pollinator recording and getting people skilled up in pollinator ID, so that we can increase records in the county. We're also working with Cumbria Biodiversity Data Centre to produce a Cumbria Bumblebee Atlas, which hopefully all of you can contribute to, even in very small ways. And we're also producing a State of Pollinators in Cumbria report as well with that, which will be feeding into local policy. We're also working on kind of nature and well-being, or well-being in nature, and we're running a programme of events around this. And in September we have the Big Buzz, which is going to be basically a festival of pollinators in Carlisle. And as part of that, there will be a national conference on Friday the 23rd, and there'll be some national experts and speakers, including Dave Goulson and Bridget Strawbridge, will be coming up to Carlisle. So lots of stuff basically on the agenda, on the schedule, and some of you will have heard about this last week, but just a quick reminder. And again, just flagging up some of our first events we have in the next month or two. As you will see, this particular webinar is part of a short webinar series we're running in March. So last week we had our Beginners Bumblebee Identification webinar. Hopefully a good number of you came to that. If you didn't, that's absolutely fine. We'll still be kind of doing a quick introduction, but we'll just be building on that basically in this webinar. And we also have another webinar in a few weeks' time focused on pollinator recording and how you can use these skills to help pollinators. So yes, I just mentioned that this webinar will be building on last week, but we'll be going into a recap of some of the stuff we talked about last week. So some of the common 8 bumblebees, and about their ecology and how to identify them. And we'll be doing a quick quiz to kind of recap that knowledge, to practice it, put it into practice. But then we'll be focusing a lot more on the cuckoo bumblebees in this webinar, which is very exciting. We'll be going into a bit about cuckoo bumblebee ecology and how they're different from our true and social bumblebees, which we've covered previously. And we'll also quickly go into some of the rare bumblebees that you're likely to see in Cumbria. And then we'll also talk a bit about how you can use your ID skills to help bumblebees as part of the Cumbria Bumblebee Atlas. And then there's some time for questions at the end. So there you go, there's a rundown of what today is going to look like for this evening even. So just a quick recap. UK, we have 270 species, or over 270 species of bee in the UK, and these bees can be split into 3 groups. So we have one species of domesticated honeybee. This is a species that, the only species that produces honey and is managed by beekeepers. Then we have our 24 species of bumblebee. 18 of these are true social bumblebees that create nests. And then the other 6 of them are cuckoo bumblebees, which we'll be getting into. And all of these are wild. So none of these are interacting with beekeepers or anyone like that in any capacity. And then we have the rest of them are solitary bees. And there's over 250 odd species of solitary bee in the UK. Very diverse group. So we'll be going over as I mentioned, 24 species of bumblebee in the UK, and we'll be doing a quick quiz on the big 8, the common 8, the generalist 8 that we started to cover last week. So I'm just going to give a quick recap on some of this before we do the quiz. So just to quickly highlight some of the terminology we'll be using during this webinar, which I mentioned last time. So so antennae, these things, tongue or proboscis, and then head, thorax, and abdomen. So the thorax and the abdomen are probably the 2 key terms which are important to try and remember. So the abdomen is the lower part of the body, and then the thorax is the kind of upper part, and then pollen baskets and wings and tails. We'll also be talking quite a bit about caste, which hopefully rings a bell. Essentially, there's 3 castes in a social bumblebee nest, and castes essentially refer to the 3 different roles that bumblebees can play in that social structure. So we have the queens. These are the largest. These are the reproductive females of the social bumblebee nest. Then we have the workers, which are basically the sterile females, and their job is to work, and they're often kind of miniature versions of the queen, basically. And then we have males who come last, and they don't really participate too much in the nest. Really, they're kind of kicked out as soon as they're big enough, and they only really and their only aim in life is really to mate, and they don't live very long. They only have a couple of weeks. Oh yes, just to highlight, so in a few species and quite a few species, all castes can look kind of superficially the same. It's the same kind of banding, colour patterns, but in other species they can look a bit different. So yeah, we'll go into some of those key differences that make that can differentiate between the castes, even when the colour patterns are the same. But just to highlight here the bumblebee year. So this is the year of a bumblebee nest, the year of a social bumblebee queen. So we are currently in the spring. So as Carl mentioned, we're just starting to see some of our queens emerge, which is really exciting. But over the past few months, over the autumn and the winter, only the bumblebee queens hibernate. Essentially, they're the only ones that kind of go through that period. They find they find somewhere for them to dig a little hole. They hibernate there without any resources, just their own fat reserves. And then when the temperatures start to rise in the spring, they come out of hibernation. This kind of signals them to emerge. And then she'll be out looking for lots of forage. She'll be really, really hungry because she hasn't eaten in a long time. She's been relying on her fat reserves. So at this time of year, forage plants and flowers are really important. And they often, and if you look around at this time of year as well, there often aren't that many flowers around. So the ones that are available are so, so important. And it's hopefully, once she's fed up, potentially for up to 2 weeks, she'll be starting to look for a nest site. And bumblebees, depending on the species, will look for different types of nest sites. So many of our species nest underground. So they use abandoned rodent holes. they like to use them and to utilize that, the bedding as well, potentially in there as well for insulation. But yeah, so using abandoned rodent holes typically in nature. In more human context, they often use any kind of man-made cavity. So it could be under your shed, it could be in your compost bin. And then there's another nest type, I guess, are the carder bees. So any bumblebee that has an carder in the name, they use long grass to nest in. So they'll find an area of long grass and they'll create a bit of essentially a kind of a structure within the base of that long grass for their nest. And then the odd one out, we have the tree bumblebee, and the tree bumblebee nests, as you might guess, aerially and typically in tree hollows in nature, although they do very well in urban areas because they really like to use bird boxes. So there you go, there's a bit of a rundown of the types of nests that our bumblebee queens will be looking for, the kind of sites that they'll be looking to make their nest. And once a queen has found a suitable site, she'll start to lay eggs. And these first eggs will be female worker bees, and the queen will kind of remain with the nest and to lay more eggs. And these workers will then go out and do the work, and they'll go and collect the food to then continue to feed the nest. So yes, these first few broods that she'll be laying will be females, will be the workers. Later on in the summer, when things are starting to, when the nest is starting to reach capacity, the queen will start to lay male eggs instead, and then those males will emerge, and by that point, hopefully, her nests and other nests will start to produce queen bumblebees, and then they will emerge, and then the males and the queens will mate, and then the cycle starts again. So there you go, a bumblebee year. So last week we went into some of the key features to help differentiate between bumblebees. So when you've got a bumblebee, how do you tell one species from the other? So we're going to quickly go over that again, just a quick recap. And these features are really important because, as I said, they help to identify certain species. And if you are starting out on your Bumblebee ID journey, you might not remember all of the characteristics for each individual species. But if you can remember to check all of these off, make sure you capture them in photos or whatever, then you can hopefully get an ID and an answer. So the first thing to pay attention to is tail colour, because bumblebees are quite handy in that they pretty much only have 3 categories for tail colour. So you have red, some bumblebees have red tails, some of them have white or off-white colours, and then some of them have ginger tails. So pay attention to tail colour first of all. Then you're looking at the banding. So you're looking at the number, the placement, the colour of the bands, and this kind of patterning on the body. And then you're looking at the legs. So legs can be really important. This is the hind leg. The hind legs can be a really important ID feature when trying to differentiate between the different castes, so the females and the males. And this can be a really useful thing because, as you saw, some of the castes can look quite different in different species. So it can be quite an important factor in ID is figuring out caste. So when it comes to the legs, the key differences that you're looking for. So with the females, you can see that they have a slightly more triangular shaped leg. There's a bit of a point at the bottom here, a bit of a point. And as you can see here in the males, it's more of a teardrop shape. It's a bit smoother here, and they also have this spur as well that sticks out, which can be a bit indicative too. Saying this is very tricky to see this and to get your eye in for these differences, but it's definitely worth trying to do this. And and then another thing as well is that with the female legs, so the females can collect pollen on their legs, but the males can't. So this is a shiny triangle in the females, whereas this is more of a slightly more matte teardrop in the boys. and if you see pollen baskets on a bumblebee, it's definitely a female, and it's definitely a true bumblebee, not a cuckoo. As you can see here on the right, just to quickly flag up that we will go into a lot more detail later, the cuckoo bumblebees generally have very hairy legs, so they don't have these shiny triangles or anything like that. It's very hairy, very stubbly, and that's because they don't do any pollen collection. So the next feature to pay attention to is face. So last week we mentioned that some of the male bumblebees, quite a few of them have yellow facial hair, they have yellow mustaches, and this is pretty indicative of the fact that you might have a male if other features align. So it's a great thing to check out and to look at, and yeah, because it can be really helpful in trying to figure out what caste you have. And also we flagged up that between two of our common bumblebee species, the two a white-tailed, 3 yellow-banded bumblebee species, face shape is basically the key difference between the two. So in the garden bumblebee, we have this long horsey shaped face, whereas in the heath bumblebee we have a short and stout face. So this is the key difference between the two of them. So if you have a look at the face, then you can tell which one you have, basically. And the last thing to consider is behaviour. So we discussed this quite a bit last week, but some examples, for example, with the queens at the moment, a lot of them will be or will soon be nest searching. So they'll be doing this kind of scanning behaviour. It's quite indicative of queens. Workers generally are more busy, they're working, and males are quite lazy. So it can be quite a good indicator of what caste you might have just by looking at behaviour. So we're going to have a quick quiz based on what we just talked about. So yeah, we just mentioned some of the differences between males and females, particularly with the legs. So hopefully we're going to load a poll, and you can tell me which one of these is the female and which one is the male. Okay.
That looks like we've got everybody's answers in now, Karen.
I think so, yeah. So I'll do poll and hopefully that'll show the results. Okay. So really great job, everyone. Yeah, you're right. So yes, bumblebee number 1 was in fact a female, and I'm hoping that this is because you've seen this lovely pollen basket here, which is a great indicator that you've got a female. And this here it's a worker garden bumblebee, although you can't see her long horsey face. And in number 2, we do in fact have a male. Well done, everyone. This is tricky, but hopefully you can see a little bit in this picture. This spur that's sticking out. You can kind of see that it's slightly teardrop shape. It's a bit kind of it's not quite so triangular at the bottom. So hopefully you can see that. But yeah, it's definitely no pollen basket anyway. So that's the key difference there. So yeah, well done, everyone. Okay. So yeah, just to recap what we just learned. So it was just talking about those yeah, the shape of the different legs, and that the female social bumblebees have these shiny triangles where they can stick their pollen, and yeah, where they have their pollen baskets, which you all know. So now we're going to go into hopefully our big 8 bumblebee quiz. So if you haven't already got your ID sheet handy, this is time to get it to hand if you can. And essentially we'll be showing pictures of each of these species, and you'll have to guess and tell us which one you think it is. Okay, so this is common species number 1. Hopefully Carl will be able to navigate the polls.
Yes, hopefully.
But yeah, in the meantime, have a look at your ID sheets, have a ponder. Which of our common 8 species do you think this is?
Is it coming up yet, Karen, the new one?
I mean, I'm seeing the older one pop up again.
Okay, thank you.
But that was from the male or female.
Yeah, we've done that.
I think I can do this. Sorry.
That's okay. We've got it now.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Hopefully that's working for folks. So these are the options, and you can select which one you think it is. Okay. Thank you, folks. I can see the answers pouring in. Now I appreciate this is tricky, but it will get a bit easier as we go on because options will be eliminated.
Might have to give us some clues later, Karen.
Yeah. We'll go through the ID features again. This is just because we don't really. Well, I'm aware that quite a few of you came last week, so maybe we don't want to go over the exact same content. And it's good to test it out, isn't it, and to have a quiz. So, but yes, we can absolutely go through the ID features again.
I think that's pretty much everybody's voted.
Yeah, let's do that. So end poll, and I'll share the results. Yep. So 80% of you, which is fantastic, really well done, guys, got common Carnaby, which it is. So this is our only ginger common bumblebee. So yeah, they have these kind of like gingery hairs, and you haven't got a white tail, you haven't got a red tail. So this is the kind of only bumblebee that's common that kind of has this kind of look. But a few of you put tree bumblebee, very understandable, because it does have this kind of brown thorax here, which does look very similar from that angle. It's just that the tail that looks a bit different. So in the tree bumblebee, you've got a black band and then you've got a white tail. But if we get time, we'll go over all of these individually, I think, and yeah, we'll go through those key ID features. But yeah, really great job, everyone. So we'll hopefully go on to the next one. Give it a go. Okay, so now we've got our next common species. So have a look here. There's a couple of different photos showing some different features. So remember, look at tail color, look at the different bands, how many different bands there are, where they are. And also look at...
Definitely a horsey face there, Carolyn.
Yeah, look at the face. Yeah, got a nice close up there. Yeah, very well done, everyone. Honestly, the idea of the different whitetail species is pretty tricky because you're looking at basically they're all superficially kind of black and yellow and white striped bees. This is the garden bumblebee. So as Carl said, nice hint. The key feature here with this species is it's got a nice long horsey face, which is a bit different to all of our other bumblebees, at least all the common ones. And this species, to differentiate from the buff and the white-tailed bumblebees, it has 3 yellow bands. Now, I understand why it doesn't really look like 3 yellow bands, because this one in the middle does look like 1, but it's essentially got 1 yellow band on the collar, and then you've got 1 yellow band at the base of the thorax, so the bottom of this part of the body, and then you've got another yellow band at the top of the abdomen. So that's 1, 2, 3 yellow bands. And then that eliminates your options down to either the garden bumblebee or the heath bumblebee. And we know it's a garden bumblebee, it's got a long horsey face. But very well done, folks, seriously. Very nice. So we'll go to the next one now. Number 3, what do we think? As you can see, there's different photos, and I should have said this previously, but we're showing some males and females, most of the different species. So that's why this one looks so different. Another tricky thing with these quizzes is that you don't know the size. So with some of these species, they're obviously a lot smaller in person, and others will be a lot bigger in person. So I appreciate that can be tricky with this. Okay, right.
Okay.
Yeah, a couple more seconds of yeah, slowing up now. Okay, I'll end the poll now. It's a great job. I can totally see why we've got a split on this one, because in terms of the early bumblebee is a red-tailed species. It's supposed to have a red tail, but as you can see here, it's a bit of a muted red tail as it goes. Particularly on the left here with the queen early bumblebee, it's a very thin red tail there. So I can totally see why we might have gone for the buff-tailed bumblebee, because it's not the reddest of reds, at least in these pictures anyway. And also between if you were actually in the field looking at a buff-tail or an early bumblebee, size difference would be such a big difference between the two, because a buff-tail bumblebee, particularly the queens, are absolutely ginormous. They're huge, really big. Whereas early bumblebees are one of our smallest bumblebees. They're really diddy. So in comparison, if you saw them in person, they look very, very different. But I appreciate them blown up in photos. It's very difficult to tell them apart. So yeah, we've got a queen here on the left. So as you can see, they've got that they're kind of two-banded yellow and a little red tail. And then we've got the boy here on the right, looking ridiculous, very yellow. Got a little yellow face, lots of extra yellow bands as well. This is probably one of our most yellow male bumblebees, and with a little red tail, shows you got an early bumblebee. Yeah, really well done, folks. Oh, sorry, I didn't share the results then. Just realised. Sorry. Yes, so the results that are there. Sorry. But yeah, very well done. So now species number 4, when it goes up. Now this is tricky, but hopefully by process of elimination, you will have figured out what it's not. So let's launch poll number 4, see what happens.
There we go. People want a bit more time to see the picture, so I just move that.
Okay, that's good. Yeah, because I'm aware that on some devices the poll can get in the way, can't it? Yeah. Okay, I think we'll end the poll.
Okay.
No. So as I said, this is probably the trickiest of the common 8, and the heath bumblebee is probably the least common of the common 8 as well. Very understandable why people went for white-tailed bumblebee, because it looks like a bumblebee with a white tail. So the key difference here is the fact that it has 3 yellow bands. Having said that, though, the males So you've got 1, 2, 3 yellow bands, which is at least in the females, because you've got a nice little triangle here which indicates it's a female. Would say that it's either going to be a garden bumblebee or a heath bumblebee, and as you can see here, this face isn't horsey and long. It's short and stout, and but saying that the males of heath bumblebees and white-tailed bumblebees are so similar, so I can completely see why people have gone for that. It's really tricky to tell them apart. But yeah, so 3 yellow bands and short face. That's the key features we're looking for with a heath bumblebee. But really well done, folks, because you know the leading option, the leading choice there was heath bumblebee. So you're on the right track. So now number 5.
Okay.
Lush, thank you, Carl. Oh yes. Sorry, I've just seen someone in the comments. We'll have a chat about that.
Perhaps, Carolyn, if we get time at the end, it's something we could talk about is the ID guides.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I've got some slides, so I've got a list of some resources. Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll end that. Oh, very well done, folks. Very nice. Yes, this is the buff-tailed bumblebee. Well, you know what you're doing, don't you? So on the left here, we've got the queen, massive queen bumblebees in the buff tail. This particular example does have a very buff tail. It's like a lovely orangey off white color. They can look a bit more white with like with a line of orange hairs, but just basically you're looking for a not pure white tail. And they've also got these lovely orangey bands. Just for measure, we've got the male on the right hand side here. As you can see, the males look very similar to the females, at least in terms of like superficially, like they've got the bands and they haven't got yellow faces or anything like that. But we'll go into the but in the white-tailed bumblebee, they do have yellow faces. So that's the key difference between the two species. I saw someone in the chat say, I'm just going to pop back to the heath bumblebee because you're very right, that in the ID guide it doesn't have a yellow face on the male heath bumblebee. I know it's an error. It's a mistake. They do have yellow faces. I think that's something that I mentioned last time when we were going through the different ID features. Male heath bumblebees do have yellow faces. You're absolutely forgiven if you put white-tailed bumblebee for that reason. That was some very sound logic. Just unfortunately the resources failed you there. So now number 6, we're reining in. We're getting towards the end.
Okay, I'll launch the poll.
Amazing.
Is this the most common one we'll see, Carolyn?
I mean, the buff tail and the white tail are probably the 2 most common. Yeah, it might be a fairly neck and neck, but different types of habitat maybe, perhaps. I see lots of white-tailed bumblebees. Like for example, when I was in the Yorkshire Dales, I saw vast majority white-tailed bumblebees, whereas in towns, anyway. But yeah.
Okay, I think we're finished now.
Very nice. Yes, a great job, everyone. Yeah, vast majority of you put down white-tailed bumblebee, which is amazing. Really well done. So hopefully you can see the differences between this species and the buff-tail, which we just had. So even though, you know, at least in the females, they both have 2 yellow bands and a whitish tail. Hopefully you can see that in the queen of the white-tailed bumblebee, she has a pure white tail. There's no bits of orange in there. It's just pure white. So that's the key difference. The workers in the buff tails and the white tails, they basically look identical, and you can't tell them apart. So you can just record them as buff or white tail workers. But at least in the queens, you can tell them apart because the buff tail bumblebees always have a bit of orange, and the white tail bumblebees are always pure white. And as you can see here on the right, the males look very different. So you've got yellow faces, you've got lots of yellow, just yellow everywhere, and a white tail. So that this looks very different. Oh, sorry, I hadn't shared the results again. There they are. So yeah, very well done, everyone. But yeah, the males look very different in the white tail bumblebees than in the buff tail bumblebees, as you can see here, because they in the species they don't have the yellow faces. So that's how you tell the two apart, basically. Yeah, very well done, folks. So now we're getting to the end. So this one here.
Okay.
Oh, amazing. Very well done. Okay, I'm gonna end that there just because everyone's doing so well. So yeah, there you go. 95% of you got that. This is the tree bumblebee. So we have the female here on the, well, a queen here on the left. As you can see, yeah, so they're quite distinctive because they have a nice white tail, black, and then this lovely chestnutty, a lovely brown thorax, nice halo there. And then the males look pretty much the same, although you can see here this particular individual, he does have a bit of a lighter mustache, and he does have a bit of brown on his hips as well, actually, in this particular one. But yeah, absolutely. So tree bumblebee, very well done, folks. This is the one because before when we had the common carder, a few folks put tree bumblebees, and they do look slightly similar, but hopefully you can see the differences in the white tail, the black band, and the kind of black on the abdomen, versus the common carder, which didn't have a white tail. Oh, sorry, I keep forgetting to show the results. There we go, 95%. So now the last one.
Okay, I'll launch that.
Lovely. Okay, I'm going to end that there as well because we're just doing so well. 100%. Amazing. You're very well done, everyone. Yeah, it's the red tail bumblebee. So we have the queen here on the left, looking just beautiful. The really black velvety loveliness. and a lovely little bright little red tail. And the workers in the species, they basically just look like miniature versions of the queen. Properly diddy, and the red-tailed bumblebee queens are huge. They really are. So yeah, really big and then really small with the workers. And then here we have a male on the left, oh sorry, on the right even. And this does look a little bit different from the other male red tail that we had. So we had the early bumblebee before, which hopefully you remember was super yellow. So this is just slightly less yellow. Got a yellow mustache, but it's only got a little bit. It's only got a little bit of yellow here at the bottom of the thorax. It's only a little bit rather than yellow everywhere. Yeah, very well done, folks. There you go. That was the common 8 species. They were the 8 species that you're going to see 95% of the time in the UK. So very well done. Yeah, really well done. So now, as I mentioned, we've got 24 species in the UK. We've just gone over the common 8. And now we're going to go over the 6 cuckoo bee species that we have, which is going to be great fun. So 6 of our 24 bumblebee species are cuckoo bumblebees. Now, like the bird, like the name implies, essentially they're social parasites of the nest of other true or social bumblebee species. So the previous 8 that we were just talking about, the common 8, they all of those species are social. They produce nests, they have queens, they have workers, they all work together to create these nests and have like a little society. Whereas the cuckoo bumblebees, they not only do they, like the cuckoo bird, lay their eggs in these, in the nests of other species, but they also exploit the fact that these other species are social and they have a workforce, which is very interesting. So yeah, as I mentioned, that we have our social and true bumblebee species, then we have our cuckoos. And because cuckoo bumblebees aren't social, they don't have these castes, they don't have these different roles because they don't fit into that society. So instead they just have males and females. So they don't have queens and workers. So as you can see here, we've got just male and female for each of these species. So on the left here, I've got the year of a social bumblebee nest. So one of the nests that we were talking about before, one of our social bumblebees. And now we're going to talk a little bit about cuckoo bumblebees and how they fit into this. How do they fit into this story? So as I mentioned, cuckoo bumblebees are social parasites. So not only do they exploit the pollen and the food that are in these social bumblebee nests, but they also exploit the workforce. So in social bumblebee nests, there's lots of workers, and they exploit this workforce so that they can go out and collect pollen and care for the cuckoo's young, basically. And cuckoo bumblebees are committed so much to this lifestyle. They've gone so hard in terms of, in evolutionary terms, they no longer are able to actually collect pollen themselves, and no longer able to, they're unable to produce workers. The female cuckoo bumblebees, they're unable to even produce enough wax to make the little to make the pots to store food and stuff. They're not able to do, physically unable to do a lot of these things because they've relied on social bumblebees for such a long time. So yeah, we've got our social bumblebee year. So it's at this point, to the point at which one of our social bumblebee queens, she's created her nest, she's found a nice site, she started to lay her eggs, and her workers are starting to work. This is the point when a cuckoo bumblebee, a female cuckoo bumblebee, will start takeover. She'll start this process. So what does that look like? Well, the female, the cuckoo bumblebees in general emerge a few weeks later than the host queens. So I just mentioned that a lot of our true bumblebee queens have just started to emerge. So our buff-tailed bumblebees and our white-tailed bumblebees and our tree bumblebees are just coming out of hibernation, and they're just starting the year and starting to feed up and get ready to set up their nest sites. So the cuckoo bumblebees are going to wait a bit longer, but they're going to stay in hibernation for a few weeks after that. And they'll wait for these queens to start their nests and to get cracking there. And then the cuckoo bumblebees, the females, she'll start to start looking, once she emerges out of hibernation, she'll start looking for local social bumblebee nests that she might want to take over. And apparently it's thought that the way that they find these nests is through smell. So they use scent in their area to try and sniff out the nest nearby. And once a cuckoo bumblebee female has found a nest that she thinks looks quite good, she'll suss it out, she'll scope it out for potentially a few days. She might even hide inside the nest, because it's really important that once a cuckoo female, goes for takeover, that she wants to commit to the right nest, and the timing of it's really, really important. So, for example, she doesn't want to go in when there's not enough workers, or she doesn't want to go in too soon. She doesn't want to go in if the queen, the show social bumblebee, has only just set up her nest and there aren't many workers, because then she's not going to have a workforce. But equally, she doesn't want to go in too late, because if then there's lots of workers and it's a massive nest, then she potentially might get killed, or she might get kicked out if there's too many workers that might be able to fight her in her takeover. So yeah, so the female cuckoo, she'll sneak in, and then she'll be looking to either subdue or kill the host queen. In most cases, she's looking to kill the queen of that nest. However, there have been some reports of the host queen and the cuckoo queens cohabiting for a while, and quite a while at that, which is really interesting. But when she goes in to take over a nest, she's looking she will be looking to subdue the workers using her own pheromones. So she produces pheromones to subdue her workforce, and she's looking to get rid of, to dethrone the queen that's currently in power. And then once she does this, she'll be looking then to essentially lay her own eggs, and getting those workers to care for her young. And her eggs can, once those eggs become larvae, those larvae, her cuckoo larvae, can actually kill the host larvae as well. They can get rid of the other young that would have been produced by that nest, or at least by indirectly they can starve them by eating all their resources. So, and then from that point, that nest will be producing cuckoo bumblebees rather than the host bumblebee species. That being said, usually cuckoo bumblebees are far less abundant than our true or social bumblebees, because as you can imagine, with parasites in general, they only survive if their host survives. So it's not sustainable for them to exist in any high numbers. So actually, if you are seeing cuckoo bumblebees, it's actually normally quite a good indicator that the local bumblebee populations are quite healthy. So if anything, it's a good thing when you are seeing them. Because having said all this, they can sound a bit like the villains, but they're not. They're just exploiting different resources, and they have a very fascinating lifestyle and a way of doing it.